Gildan Media, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Coffeehouse Investor's Ground Rules. Save, invest, and plan for a life of wealth and happiness by Bill Schultheis. Narrated by Peter Lerman. Limit of liability, disclaimer of warranty. While the publisher and author have used their best efforts in preparing this book, they make no representations or warranties with respect to the accuracy or completeness of the contents of this book, and specifically disclaim any implied warranties of merchantability or fitness for a particular purpose. No warranty may be created or extended by sales representatives or written sales materials. The advice and strategies contained herein may not be suitable for your situation. You should consult with a professional where appropriate. Neither the publisher nor author shall be liable for any loss of profit or any other commercial damages, including but not limited to special, incidental, consequential, or other damages. Forward. Bill Schultheis starts his book with a simple reflection. We are changing the world one investor at a time. Over the past 20 years, on countless exchanges I have had with Bill, in person, over the telephone, and through our emails, as we discover new and better ways to help investors reach their lifetime goals, we always seem to end by voicing the same intention. We are changing the world one investor at a time. Our connection goes all the way back to 1998. That was the year I wrote my first book, The Only Guide to a Winning Investment Strategy You'll Ever Need. That was the same year Bill wrote his first book, The Coffeehouse Investor: How to Build Wealth, Ignore Wall Street, and Get On with Your Life. Our books had at least three things in common. Both attempted to explain complex investing concepts in a layman's manner. Both highlighted the wisdom of capturing market returns through index funds. And both were published in the middle of a raging bull market, fueled by the dot-com boom, when few investors paid much attention to efficient markets and index funds. The bear market that followed was the catalyst for investors to seek out a smarter way to build portfolios. We were prepared with the solution. Bill Schultheis possesses the unique gift of simplicity in his writing. He takes dense financial terms bandied about on Wall Street and turns them upside down, so that after reading his work you turn away from standard deviations, alphas, and betas to focus instead on wealth-building components that matter most of all in life. For this reason, my firm, Buckingham Strategic Wealth, invited him to St. Louis in 2001 to speak to our clients. True to his book, Bill's presentation of stocks, bonds, and asset allocation evolved into a deeper exploration of using your financial resources to live a more meaningful life. The late Jack Bogle spoke of the missionary zeal that he hoped to inspire, of taking the time to share with others the simple tenet of using index funds as building blocks for portfolios. When I reflect on the past 20 years, Bill is near the top of a luminous list of authors, advisors, and academics in his passion for carrying on the work of America's legendary stalwart. Our shared investing experience is based on decades of financial research, showing that markets are efficient. In an investing world consumed with owning the top stocks of leading industries, building lasting wealth requires a patient commitment to capturing the returns of global markets. The investing process, however, is only one component, albeit an important one, to building lasting financial wealth. As Bill vigorously points out in this book, the primary benefit to embracing efficient markets in portfolio construction is that investors are emotionally freed to turn away from random, short-term volatility of markets and focus on financial planning issues that are essential to lifetime wealth accumulation. This is especially true for women, as Bill points out in Chapter 3. According to the consulting firm McKinsey & Company, a vast transfer of wealth is unfolding as male baby boomers die, leaving assets to spouses for their control and management. It is estimated that by 2030, women will be in charge of $30 trillion, an increase from $10 trillion in 2016. Bill Schultheis is uniquely qualified to discuss the challenges investors face in building lasting wealth. Working as a co-owner and advisor of Soundmark Wealth Management in Seattle, Washington, he sees the same complexities faced by clients of Buckingham Strategic Wealth, of integrating tax management solutions within the portfolio design of your comprehensive financial plan. For 20 years, our investing and financial planning discussions always seem to move to conversations about life. Bill has always pushed me to climb the mountains of the Pacific Northwest. I encouraged him to join me rafting the white waters of the Colorado River. There comes a point in whitewater rafting, and Bill has shared the same in his mountain climbing experience, when you are in the danger zone. You have to slow the mind down, focus on what is at hand, breathe, and push on. That is the experience facing the investor today. The global economy is in turmoil from the virus pandemic. Interest rates are at an all-time low. The Federal Reserve is flooding the economy with money with the fear of inflation emerging. Significant tax law changes loom large on the horizon. Wall Street is inundating unsuspecting investors with meaningless and expensive financial products. It is time for investors to slow down, breathe, and push on. The Coffeehouse Investors Ground Rules will guide you to a life of wealth and happiness over the next 2 decades and beyond, as Bill's first book did for its readers. I encourage you to grab your fresh brewed coffee and enjoy Bill's thoughtful musings on investing and life. I have seen the impact these timeless ground rules have had on the lives of clients at Buckingham Strategic Wealth. They will have the same impact on yours. As you embrace the ground rules, Bill and I invite you to share them with others. Together, we will continue to change the world one investor at a time. Larry Swedroe, Chief Research Officer of Buckingham Strategic Wealth and Buckingham Strategic Partners. Preface. I grew up on a farm, and I like telling stories about growing up on the farm. The things I learned on the farm have stuck with me throughout my life. It is the wisdom I share with you. I didn't grow up in the Depression, but my grandparents did. They raised my mother and father in the Depression, and I think that had something to do with how my grandparents managed their money. They didn't have online banking accounts. They didn't have mobile apps to buy and sell stocks. They didn't have a subscription to Morningstar to track mutual funds. And they didn't watch Jim Cramer on CNBC because they didn't have a television. They had a passbook savings account. This little ledger was the size of a passport, issued to them by the local bank, and they kept track of how much they saved and how much they spent, down to the penny. I know because I have those passbooks in my possession as a keepsake of the memory of how money flowed through their life. One grandpa was a farmer. My other grandpa was a banker. Maybe that had something to do with the meticulous financial records I kept in my own passbook savings account of the pigs I raised and sold, and the money I earned that was deposited into the bank at a savings rate much higher than the savings rates of today. That passbook savings account was our financial planning calculator. Life was simple back then, but it wasn't easy. Everything changed in 1982. That was the year passbook savings accounts became passé. That was the year I graduated from college and became a stockbroker. That was the year company-sponsored 401k plans were introduced to the workplace. That was the year the stock market started its 18-year bull market run, producing double-digit returns almost twice its historical average. An almost unimaginable 18-year bull market run, combined with thousands and then millions of investors saving for retirement in workplace retirement plans, caused a monumental shift in our society away from a passbook savings mentality of building wealth and toward a stock-picking mentality of building wealth. It couldn't last forever, and it didn't. Everything came crashing down during the bear market of 1999 to 2002, when the S&P 500 index declined 47% over a 3-year period, and the tech-heavy NASDAQ index plummeted 78% from its highs. Investors who were building retirement plans on the backs of these high-flying stocks had their dreams shattered. Fortunately for them, a better way of building wealth was emerging. Throughout the 20 years leading up to the dot-com bubble, an unconventional investment strategy was beginning to unfold. Led by Burton Malkiel's book, A Random Walk Down Wall Street, and John Bogle's efforts at Vanguard, the simple concept of buying all the companies in a low-cost index fund was taking hold. As luck would have it, 1998 was the year I introduced my book, The Coffeehouse Investor, to the world. Based on 3 timeless financial principles, its message was simple and profound. Principles that form the Coffeehouse ground rules today: save, invest, and create a financial plan for your future. Soon after my book was published, I began writing a weekly investment column in the King County Journal, at that time Washington's 3rd largest daily newspaper. When I began writing the column, I needed to get creative in describing a coffeehouse investor-type portfolio to the reader, and so I designed a 60-40 portfolio of Vanguard index funds. It seemed like every other week I reminded readers that my 60-40 portfolio was just one example of a coffeehouse investor-type portfolio, but I guess you cannot stop a good thing. My 7-fund portfolio took on a life of its own with investors across the nation, highlighted early on by Paul Farrell and his lazy portfolios at MarketWatch.com. The merits of this portfolio is still endorsed by slice and dice advocates, and its return, going back to 1999, is closely monitored in the Madsinger Monthly Report at bogleheads.org. Despite its enduring popularity, the portfolio's benefit isn't found in its specific construction nor its 20-year returns. It is found in investors capturing their fair share of market returns over time, as Mr. Bogle was fond of saying. Since then, I have witnessed the life-changing impact of these ground rules on the lives of investors across the nation and around the world. Slowly, investors started turning away from a picking stocks mentality and returned to the passbook savings account mentality of building wealth. The coffeehouse investor movement is part of a larger movement to embrace low-cost index funds as the preferred method of owning common stocks. But the movement is much larger than index funds, because index funds and target date funds are not some magical investment that secures your financial independence in retirement. These funds are simply building blocks within your portfolio that allow you to focus on what matters within your financial plan. The larger movement taking hold across our nation is a more meaningful vision of wealth and happiness. For better or worse, we live in a society that has come to define wealth and happiness as an accumulation of more material things. Our empty pursuit of more is a byproduct of a capitalistic focus on bigger and better. In working closely with coffeehouse investors over the past 20 years as a financial advisor located just outside Seattle, Washington, these sages have redefined this pursuit of more. More community, more creativity, more family, more sustainability, more equality, more of all those things that give you life and nudge the global community forward. This is what the ground rules are all about. We invite you to join us as we live our lives of wealth and happiness and share it with others. This book will show you how. 1. Two lives become one. Hello, Bill. I enjoyed attending your webinar the other night. While the information wasn't new to someone who has been a devout coffeehouse investor for 6 years already, it's always good to review the material. I believe so strongly in the coffeehouse's philosophy that I've bought many copies of your book to give away. Right now, there are many family members and friends' family members who are graduating from college. Each one receives a copy of your book and a check to get started from my wife and I. Wish I had been given such advice and a check to start with when I was their age. Jean. For the past 20 years, coffeehouse investors like Jean have taken it upon themselves to change the world. One investor at a time. I never met Jean, but he sent me this email about 10 years ago. Together, we have redefined the ground rules of investing by using low-cost index funds as building blocks for our portfolios. His email is a reminder that all of us have an opportunity to touch people's lives in a profound way. Now, the energy of the universe is asking us to do more. It is time to redefine the ground rules for a life of wealth and happiness. Save, invest, plan. We are asked to share these simple ground rules to nudge the global community forward and stay in sync with the unfolding universe. That is what coffeehouse investors are all about. Taking control of your financial destiny to get on track, stay on track, and make a difference in the world. Imagine what you could do with your life if your financial resources created harmony, not anxiety, in your pursuit of wealth and happiness. The world needs you to live your rich life more than ever before. When I look back over the past 20 years, Tony stands out as one example of someone who lives a life of wealth and happiness. I have watched Tony's life unfold, partly because his father, a cousin of mine, has kept me in the loop. Tony didn't pursue a career in home construction like his father, nor a job in banking like his grandfather. Inspired by his mother, he decided on a career in education. He wanted to teach, but he wanted more. He decided to broaden his reach and become a principal. Now he wants to broaden his reach even more and is working on his doctorate in one of the most challenging school districts in Washington state. We will explore society's pursuit of more in Chapter 8, but for Tony, his pursuit of more nudges the global community in the right direction. Somewhere along the way, he and his wife Katie arrived at a harmony between saving for tomorrow and living their rich life today. Along the way, he was introduced to the coffeehouse investment philosophy, and they slowed down their lives enough to make sure they are on track, allowing themselves the freedom to move forward in life, doing what they do best, raising children, teaching children, and touching lives. Tony would probably say, "If I can do it, anyone can do it." It's all about the ground rules. Save, invest, plan. Tony's story is not exceptional, and that is what being a coffeehouse investor is all about. Ordinary people living extraordinary lives and making a difference. An essential part of Tony's journey, an essential part of all our journeys, is finding the elusive harmony between planning for tomorrow and living a life of wealth and happiness today. Behind Tony's easygoing smile is a knack for tuning in to the energy of the universe. I admire that. There was a time in my life when I wish I had done the same. When I graduated from college in 1982, I was pulled in two different directions, wanting to pursue my own interest in computers and wanting a relationship with my father. I grew up in a small farming community in eastern Washington, and like most boys, I just wanted to connect with my father. Even though I was fascinated with this new thing called a personal computer, my father loved following the stock market, and so I chose a career that fascinated my father instead of pursuing my own interest in computers. After college, I moved to Seattle to begin my career as a stockbroker for the Wall Street firm Smith Barney. I set a goal for myself of making 100 cold calls a day, trying to capture clients and generate commissions for the firm. It was a tough job making 100 cold calls every day, dealing with the rejection, and then doing it again the next day, and the day after that. I thought it would get easier over time, and I would become immune to the rejection as I built up my clients, but it only got worse. I felt empty emotionally, and every day on that long walk from the bus stop to the office in downtown Seattle, my heart was telling me I needed a change. It would be easy to look back and say that it was a mistake to pursue a Wall Street career and stick with it as long as I did. But now it seems it was meant to be. I hated cold calling the most. The cold calling experts told us if we persevered through 95 rejections to gain 5 potential clients, it was a success. And to some stockbrokers, it was a formula for success. Not me. Early on, I turned away from the cold calling and did what a lot of college graduates do when they're trying to figure things out. I called Mom. In her infinite wisdom, she said, "Get involved." And so I did. I volunteered to coach a boys' youth basketball team, and then I volunteered to coach a girls' volleyball team. I signed up to answer phones on the Seattle Crisis Line. I joined a neighborhood baseball team. I served food at homeless shelters. I signed up for a mountaineering class and then a cooking class. Even though I was miserable at work, I found meaning in those activities. I fell in love with the mountains, the water, and most of all, the people of Seattle. But I still hated cold calling. Selling stocks was a commission-driven business, and the idea of helping clients reach their financial goals never registered with the management of the brokerage firm. Although I was a failure at selling stocks, I discovered I was good at getting clients to buy bonds. In the early 1980s, the people I was calling in the wealthy neighborhoods of Seattle didn't want stocks. They wanted AA-rated tax-free bonds with great yields. And back then, they were great yields. My cold calling script went something like this. "Hi, this is Bill from Smith Barney. The state of Washington is issuing a AA-rated tax-free bond next week with a great yield on it. Do you want any?" These people didn't care if I was Bill, Bob, or Brian. All they heard was, "Smith Barney, State of Washington, AA-rated, great yield." When I finished calling the wealthy neighborhoods of Seattle, I called the wealthy neighborhoods of Portland, Oregon, where my pitch worked just as well. "Smith Barney, State of Oregon, AA-rated, great yield." These investors didn't want the risk of stocks. They wanted a secure stream of income. I eventually had clients in several states across the nation, was making a good living as one of Smith Barney's largest municipal bond brokers, but I still had that empty feeling inside. Looking back, that emptiness was simply the energy of the universe nudging me to pursue a richer life. I had no idea what was in store for me, but after 10 years of selling bonds, I had to make a change. My decision to quit my job was prompted by a discussion I had with the dad of one of my volleyball players. As the executive director of Hospice of Seattle, he invited me to serve on the Hospice Community Advisory Board. I also worked as a hospice volunteer, connecting with residents, listening to their stories, and holding their hands. Looking back, that experience of holding hands and listening to stories allowed me to embrace my own mortality. The wisdom of Confucius sums up the emotions I felt in meeting with hospice residents. A man has 2 lives to live, and the second one begins when he realizes he only has one. The more time I spent connecting with hospice residents, the more I came to grips with my one life to live. I needed to make a change, and that was the motivation to end my career at Smith Barney. I knew it was the right decision, but it was still an empty feeling, stepping away from a job in finance with nothing in front of me to pursue. I felt like I had wasted 10 years of my life. It didn't help that I had 3 brothers and 4 sisters who were raising families and doing great things with their lives. That made me feel even more lost. And so I packed my bags and moved 70 miles north of Seattle to a little town called Lerman. In that little town, I had the same feelings of isolation and confusion I endured when I first moved to Seattle, but this time I had a game plan. I got involved. I climbed mountains. I volunteered at a hospital. I took classes and taught classes while contemplating my next steps. I signed up for the 2-day Seattle to Portland STP bike ride, and after a long first day of biking at the halfway point, our biking crew spent the night at a Jesuit retreat house. Late in the evening, I had a conversation with Alexis, a spiritual counselor. When I shared my emptiness with her, she gently responded, "When you return to Lerman, go dig in the dirt, and you will figure it out." After I returned to Lerman, I planted a garden, and then tended my rose bushes for the next 2 years while living off the small savings I had accumulated during my years at Smith Barney. It wasn't an instant epiphany, but while digging in the dirt, planting my garden, and tending the rose bushes, I figured it out. A radical movement was taking hold across the investing landscape, spurred on by Burton Malkiel's book, A Random Walk Down Wall Street, and John Bogle's work at Vanguard. The core idea of this movement was elegant in its simplicity. Instead of searching out the top companies for a successful investing experience, the best way to maximize your returns in the stock market was to own all the companies through a low-cost index fund. I wanted to participate in this radical movement. I was convinced it would have a meaningful impact on the lives of investors by allowing them to turn their attention away from the daily gyrations of the stock market and toward some simple ground rules in pursuit of wealth and happiness. Save, invest, plan. I also knew this radical idea would require a new way of thinking for many investors, including me. When you are around a father for 22 years who is obsessed with picking stocks, and then get involved in an industry for the next 10 years that is obsessed with picking stocks, well, you just kind of take it for granted that the best way to invest in the stock market is picking the top stocks. The more I thought about this movement, the more I realized I had discovered my purpose in life. Today, index funds have captured the attention of investors around the world, but in 1993, most investors had no idea what an index fund was. I read what seemed like the only 2 books on index funds, by Burton Malkiel and John Bogle, But I knew my brothers and sisters probably would not read those books. Like most investors who are saving and investing.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?